All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Mankind has known poetry for so long that we cannot trace its origins. It is one of the oldest literary art forms, and like any other art, it tells us our history. Yet it hasn't faded away. Poetry is a form of expression, a process of creating a literary art which cannot be seen or touched but can only be felt, and that piece of art is called a poem. Through the ages, the art of writing a poem has been evolved, and so there are various categories under the classification of poetry. For example, it is not necessary for a poetry to have line breaks. A poetry without line breaks, but with some punctuation, is simply called prose poetry. Also, there is no obligation that a poem should rhyme. So, you may ask, what exactly makes a poem? Let's look at the features of a poem. There is no doubt that a poem consists of imaginary elements and emotional effects. It invokes the sensory experience of the reader through beautiful, ear-soothing words and a tool called poetic device. Poetic devices are basically a wide range of techniques used to make the piece of writing vivid. The most common poetic device which we use almost in our daily lives are metaphors. Metaphors, in simple words, mean associating, referring, or comparing one thing to something, which in reality or in a literary sense is not possible, but are used to create an imaginative speech. Metaphors are not factual, they are crafts. They give a deeper meaning, an abstract idea, which is brought to life. Consider these lines from a poem. The seed I spent or sown it where, the land is his and none of mine. We speak like strangers, there is no sign of understanding in the air. In the first two lines, we are not actually talking about sowing a seed, but about a father-son relationship. Instead of making a simple statement about the broken relationship, the poet uses a metaphor not only to convey about their matter, but to make us feel the broken bond of the father-son relationship. If you noticed, the third line of the stanza has another poetic device. Speak like strangers. Metaphors where the comparison is made directly by using words like and as is called a simile. Let's talk about some other common poetic devices. Repetition, a technique to repeat the same words or phrases several times to emphasize on a particular idea, such as here. In this poem of Shakespeare, word sans is repeated, whereas we call it alliteration when consonant sounds are repeated, commonly used in tongue twisters, such as in this case. Bumbling, bambling band of baboons is an alliteration. Now consider these lines from the poem The Voice of Rain by Walt Whitman. I am the poem of earth, said the voice of the rain. Eternal I rise, impalpable out of the land and the bottomless sea. Now rain is actually not a person or living being, but is portrayed as one. This is called personification. Then there is antithesis, where a combination of opposite opinion, ideas, etc. is mentioned, as in, that's one small step for men, one giant leap for mankind. Oxymorons. Oxymorons are sometimes also used in poems to give a deeper experience about a feeling or a scenario. In case if you don't know, oxymorons are phrases consisting of two opposite words used together, and they literally have no sense but emotionally does. Here's an example. The sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter. Both rive with the labored ease of loss. It is understandable that there is no ease in labor. Use of oxymorons are not rare actually. You may have heard or used the phrase pretty ugly. That's an oxymoron. Another one of the most famous expressions used in literature is irony. In this, the writer makes reader to expect something, but opposite happens. Remember the first poetic lines we discussed? This child is built to my design, yet what he loves I cannot share. This is a case of irony, because the child shares characteristics and features of his father, but yet there are abstract differences. So far we have discussed several things about poetry, how poetic devices, figures of speech, matching sounds, and choice of words gives us a soothing effect. Yet there is so much more to learn about these tools and importance of poetry. Understanding poetry and studying classical poems has helped us to discover the history of philosophy and culture. It opens a door, perhaps to a new world, or just to the mind of the poet. It forms a connection, a nexus of minds, minds of writers and readers. From William Shakespeare to Sylvia Plath, it's an exploration of everything. If you love poems or want to learn more about poems, subscribe Acapedia and turn on notifications because we are bringing a series of videos just about poems. If you liked our video, do support us through sharing our content and reward us with a thumbs up.